This is Joe Morse. You are listening to the History of Aviation podcast with Derrick Beeler, David Rowe, and David Gorman.
Hello and welcome to the History of Aviation podcast. I'm Derrick Beeler. Thanks for making us a part of your day. In this episode, we have an aircraft that was requested by a loyal listener named Allison, the Beechcraft Bonanza. The Beechcraft Bonanza was an American general aviation aircraft introduced in 1947 by Beech Aircraft Corporation in Wichita, Kansas. Plane spotter, graphic designer, aviation enthusiast, Mr. David Rowe. How you doing, David?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. A little rush tonight getting in and getting set up, but I'm here. Happy to be here. Had a good day today. Had a Black Hawk fly into Tri-Cities Airport, a medevac helicopter, and got some landing and takeoff videos. So have a nice little video out of that. So I'm a happy camper on that end. So a good day for me. Thank you. Good to be here.
Aviation enthusiast, plane spotter, science teacher, Mr. Dave Gorman. How are you, bud?
What do you say, gentlemen? How we doing, guys? Everybody doing okay tonight?
Wonderful.
That's
Doing
good
well.
to hear. I've had a pretty good week, staying busy. It was laundry day today, so that always is a great way to spend the time. And then look online and find out that people were taking pictures of Antonov 124s over Knoxville and a brace of Osprey came in and landed. I guess they landed. I don't know.
They did. I couldn't
read through the tears to see what happened. I was sad I missed them, but happy for my friends that got out there and got to see some awesome aviation out there at the out of McGee Tyson here in Knoxville. But man, we're going to be talking tonight about another aircraft that is. What an incredible history of this plane. So one I've never flown in. I know it when I see it a lot of the times, learning a lot about it. What an incredible plane.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same as you. I've never been in one. Can obviously recognize it in the sky. That VTEL gives it away pretty quick. But don't have a lot of history or knowledge of it, but have been studying up on it, and some interesting things have happened with this plane. It's a really well regarded airplane.
Well, do you know anybody who's flown one, Dave?
Oh, well, there might be somebody that we're talking to that might have had a chance to hop in one, Derrick.
Got a few hours in one. I did. A few very scary hours.
Now, wait a minute. What do you mean scary?
Well, you know, we don't tell many stories on this podcast. So my great Bonanza story is the yoke on a Bonanza is you pass that yoke back and forth from pilots, co-pilot, pilot, whatever. I was with a really good friend of mine. I won't name any names. And he owned a Bonanza in 1954. And I mentioned to him while riding with him in the Bonanza one day that I'd like to learn how to fly. Well, he handed me the yoke.
Well,
and when you're in that moment, you have a yoke in your hand. You've never operated an airplane in your entire life, and the man that knows what he's doing has no yoke.
Well, he was probably just waiting for that opportunity to surprise you like that, and
I was hooked ever since. So all in all, when it comes to aviation, the Bonanza is what got me hooked.
That's what did it. Well,
yep.
Congratulations for not soiling the plane or yourself or anything else, and still a good memory for you. So
very much so. We'll never forget it.
Oh, I can't imagine how you could. My gosh. Is that guy still flying?
He is. Yes.
Oh, man. Okay. He's probably done that to a few other people, I'm sure.
Well, you know, the saying is, if you want to know how to swim, you know, jump in the water.
I think one of the biggest surprises I had while looking at some things about the Bonanza, you mentioned that this buddy of yours was flying a 1954 Bonanza. And
Correct.
Holy crap, that's almost 70 years old. But that's not the oldest Bonanza.
Nope.
Not even close.
David, when did they start making these suckers?
Well, they started building them in 1945. They were airworthy in 1947. That's when you could purchase them. So from 1947 until today, they have been building the Beech Bonanza. I did read that they did take 1 year off in 2021, but they didn't build any during that year. But literally, it has been consistently built since 1947. You can buy a new one today, just like you could in 1947.
That's amazing to have that type of production run and to know that, with all the advances in aviation that have occurred and all the streamlining and different styles and things that have come and gone in a lot of cases, that this classic design is still here. And we think about when this aircraft was being designed, when it was being formulated and thought about, what was the market? Who were these people that Beech was hoping to attract to general aviation?
It was basically fighter pilots. It was all the pilots coming out of the U.S. Army Air Corps from World War II. They expected all those guys to come home and want a plane of their own. And so Beechcraft, Walter Beech and Rick Harmon was the designer. They put together this airplane that it's literally right from the beginning. They got it right when they designed it. It looks fast. It's sleek. It sort of looks like a fighter plane, low wing, it's flush rivets, it's smooth. So everything about it was meant to appeal to those returning veterans who were pilots. And sure enough, it hit a market that was in need of an airplane.
Well, I'd always heard that about the Globe Swift, that shared those type of design characteristics with low wing and retractable gear. Certainly a sleek look, all metal monoplane. So that those guys were competitors, right? The Globe Swift and the Bonanza.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there were several that they were competing against. The Cessna 195 was sort of the biggest competitor, but it was your old style design, the high wing, a tail dragger, looked like an old 30s airplane. So it wasn't very modern. You also had the Aeronca Champ, the Taylorcraft, Stinson. Interesting, the Beech Stagger Wing was a contemporary of this plane. From 1933 to 49, I believe. There was like a 2-year crossover, so it was actually competing against the Stagger Wing, which is probably one of the most beautiful planes ever built. So I mean, it had some competition, but it stood out from all of those.
So some 17,000 of these have been manufactured and sold.
Correct.
An astounding number, and in production for almost 80 years.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And when they first came out, like in 1947, the first 1,000 that they built, you could buy for just under $8,000, which was pretty hefty penny back then. But at the same time, to buy a new one today, the G36 version, you're looking at $1 million.
That's the one with the glass cockpits, the Garmin.
Yes, it's got the Garmin, the whole. I mean, it's as slick as it can be. The pictures of it are just beautiful. But now, if you want to go back and buy, I looked at Trade-A-Plane, and they have some 1950s Bonanzas on there for about $50,000. I'm sure they're not the cleanest and the nicest, but if you've got 50,000 or a couple of 100,000, you can get into a 50s or 60s Bonanza reasonably easy. So they're out there.
Good, strong, reliable aircraft. That is amazing. And one other thing that I didn't have any idea of, I've seen these aircraft and see them in Oshkosh. There'll be, a couple hundred of them, it seems. That they actually, some of the first ones were built with fabric control surfaces.
That is correct. I think it was like the first 40 had fabric before they went to the all metal. I think it's magnesium alloy, which is actually a problem today because that V-tail, you can't, nobody makes a V-tail for a replacement part. You literally have to go find an old one and refurbish it and put it back on. There are no new build V-tails available apparently, and that's one of the problems with the Bonanza, the V-tail Bonanzas today, is getting parts for those old ones.
Yeah. So when you say new build V-tails, you mean just the tail surfaces themselves, not the complete aircraft.
Correct.
So,
Yes. It's just those
yeah.
magnesium alloys. They apparently pit and corrode, and nobody builds those anymore. There's no company set up to do it. So there's actually a bounty out there. The Beechcraft Bonanza folks have put out a bounty of was it $500,000 or something if a company would start building those so that they can start replacing them and
that
make
would
it
be
easier
to
on them.
replace the magnesium tail surface
Right.
or control surface. Wow.
Yeah, but to make them more modern, just to make them simpler to repair and upgrade.
So this plane has seen some changes over the years, upgrades and engine sizes and things like that. And we've talked about the V-tail as well as the standard configuration tail, which has changed over time. There also was a model that I guess is the one that's currently being built, which is the conventional tail and a little bit longer. But overall, this is a pretty recognizable body style for this aircraft, isn't it?
Yeah, basically it hasn't changed, other than the tail. That's the only thing that's really different. If you look at some of the early models, they don't have that third window behind the cockpit. So there's some, subtle things that you can look at where they've stretched it out for the 36 model. It's a longer stretched version, but it's basically the same layout as it was envisioned in 1947. It really hasn't had a substantial physical change.
That's pretty amazing. And again, a tribute to the designers who have long ago left this earth, but left us with a incredible aircraft that is still very, very popular in general aviation. Surprisingly, there's at least one guy that flies one of these aerobatically, and I am hopefully going to pronounce his name correctly, Jim Pites or Peets. My apologies, sir, if you're listening. I hope you are, but I've watched him several times up at Oshkosh perform. And the first time I was like, what in the world is this? Because it's like, well, this plane doesn't do aerobatic. Oh my gosh, what is he doing? There's a knife edge pass and a climb out and a roll. And, he's just putting it through its paces. And the plane looks beautiful, performs beautifully, and look forward to seeing him every year now.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what this plane is capable of. I'm sure that one is, I think they structurally increased it just a little bit, but at the same time, I mean, it's a sound, aircraft. It's built well, tough. And, I was listening to a pilot talk about landing on a grass field, and he said the landing gear are really sturdy. He says we land on this, rough field, and the plane just rides right along, doesn't have any issues with it whatsoever. So stout. It's a stout plane to begin with.
Have to be, I'm sure. I thought I read somewhere that some of these have 3-bladed propellers, some of the newer models. Is that correct?
Yes, they sure do. And that's based on engine configurations.
Sure.
There's been like 50 different variations on this aircraft of model, engine changes and upgrades, turbos. They seem to like Hartzell propellers. I kept seeing Hartzell mentioned as the propeller manufacturer. But yes, there are 2-bladed and 3-bladed engine or propellers on these planes.
I think Hartzell are considered about the best there are, so that's
Correct.
a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also really surprised to see about the military applications.
Yes, that was, I didn't really think that was used for it, but they sure did. Spanish Air Force used it, the F-33C. The Mexican Air Force also used an F-33C. The Indonesian Navy used a G-36. Here's an interesting one. The Iranian Air Force reverse engineered a Bonanza and built their own. It is not a licensed version. They just got one and reverse engineered it and built their own. So they fly it. And then, of course,
it's a lot easier to do that than a Tomcat. So, come on.
Yeah, true.
Right, exactly. But the most interesting is the United States. They actually used these in Vietnam as listening reconnaissance aircraft. They would fly some of these above the Ho Chi Minh Trail and use it to listen to their listening devices that they had planted on the trail. They were called Pave Eagles 1 and 2. There was probably about 30 or so of them built. They lost 8 to not in combat. They lost them while they were working, but none of them were shot down. They were all engine problems or weather related. And I think there were 3 pilots that actually perished flying those missions. But yeah, the U.S. military did use them.
You think about taking a Bonanza up in a war zone, especially something critical. Those guys are flying overhead at night, no doubt. I would guess, because that's when a lot of the Ho Chi Minh Trail activity was happening under cover of darkness. So these guys are up there flying in diminished conditions and everything, and trying to listen in.
Yeah, it's a jungle. There's no light. I mean, It's literally pitch black out there.
And it was called a Pave what? Pave Hawk?
Pave Eagle. Pave Eagle 1.
Okay.
Yeah, the Eagle 1 was based on an E-33 Debonair, which we haven't just talked about, but we'll get to. And the other one was based on a A-36 Bonanza. All these numbers on the Bonanzas, A's and D's and G's. I mean, there's so many versions. It's amazing. So going back to the Debonair, so there's 3 basic models. There is the Model 35, which is the V-tail, which everybody's kind of familiar with.
That was the original one.
Correct. It was how it was originally designed. That one was from 1947 to 1982, and then they stopped making them in 82 for probably legal reasons, which we'll get to. The next one. While they were building that one, the Model 35, they decided, let's do a conventional tail version that's kind of stripped down and simpler, cost a little bit less, and be a little bit more competitive against some of the Pipers and some of the other planes out there. That's the Model 33, called the Debonair. That lasted for a few years, and everybody just called them Bonanzas, so they just switched back to Bonanza. And then the current model, which is 1968 to today, is the Model 36. And so that one is the one that you can go to your local dealer and purchase new today.
Yeah, so I was reading about all that and seeing, trying to, because I see sometimes reports about Beech A36s, and I'm always like, okay, what is that? And finally realized that of course is the Bonanza, and now I know the difference. The 36 is the newest one, even though it's been in production since the 60s. It is the newest, the stretch limousine model, right?
Yeah, exactly. Stretched is the word. It's 6 passengers. That's one of the hallmarks of this airplane that makes it sort of the perfect family or small business plane. You can put 6 people in it and travel a pretty good distance in it. So it's perfect for, small families and business uses.
I saw something. The range of this plane is just over 800 miles loaded, I suppose. And that's pretty good. But like you, I'm sure, I was reading about a specially modified Beech back in the late 40s. And there's always stuff like this that happens. But if you're a Beechcraft salesman, you love this kind of stuff, because a guy put tip tanks on a Beech aircraft and took off in Hawaii and flew to the continental U.S. and did it nonstop, which is amazing. That plane, do you remember the name of it?
Waikiki Beach.
And I love how they spelled beach, of course, Beech.
Yeah.
But took that sucker in and set a record for that, that length of flight and everything. But that wasn't enough. It did even more, didn't it?
Yeah. Just a couple of months later, he turned around and flew from Honolulu to Teterboro across the continental U.S.
In New Jersey. That's mind-boggling.
in a beach,
Now, I've been fortunate enough to fly to Hawaii one time, and it's a thrilling flight. It's pretty cool, but it's just 5 hours, and I could stand up. I can't imagine going all the way from Hawaii to New Jersey in a plane this small, and no drink service or anything. So poor guy.
Well, we're talking 36 hours, guys. 36 hours and 1 minute. That's not a short trip.
No, it's not.
Very incredible. And it's probably good he was over land as much as he was, but that still is impressive stuff. And then that plane was used a third time for another record-breaking flight a couple years later. And if I read correctly, it is on display in the up at Udvar-Hazy up in D.C., the Smithsonian annex out at Dulles. So you could still see the Waikiki Beach up there.
Yep, that's exactly right. As a matter of fact, though, those long flights stood as records up until 2014 when a Matt Gunthmiller, he was the youngest pilot at 19 years, 7 months, and 15 days, flew around the world in 44 days and 12 hours. He flew 30,500 miles.
Wow.
So these guys are, putting their planes through their paces.
Well, and again, if you're trying to sell these things to people and you've got some competition, I mean, you mentioned about 5 or 6 different models that the Bonanza was in competition with. Those types of flights certainly help you say, look at the reliability, look at the range. This guy flew 36 hours straight without engine trouble. There was a lot of that kind of stuff, and we've talked about that with some other aircraft in the past here on the podcast. But impressive stuff. I would make it maybe 3 hours in this and then say, okay, you keep the yoke on your side and
just go. Yeah.
That would be it. Impressive stuff. I know this plane too, and I'll give again a shout out to our super fan, Bruce Kawakami, who would be among the first to tell us about the sad history in music history of the Beechcraft Bonanza. Don McLean commemorated the day the music died in 1959 when one of these went down in Iowa, taking with it Richie Valens, Buddy Holly, of course, and a guy called the Big Boppers, as well as the pilot who crashed in a snowstorm in a flight that they probably should never have attempted. But the Bonanza was cemented in history for that. And obviously the plane was not at fault. It was pilot error and weather conditions and things like that. But sad remembrance there. And as I said, the day the music died.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. It's got several notable people that have had accidents with the Bonanza, and most of it goes back to just improper use of the airplane, just being in places where it shouldn't be. But that's human nature. We try to push through things when we shouldn't. And,
well, we sure do. And staying on the subject of Bruce, he'd also mention about Randy Rhoads, who was famous as Ozzy Osbourne's
yes, that's
guitarist.
Correct.
Randy's last performance was here at Knoxville.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And Bruce was there. I don't think there's any connection. But
was he playing bass?
Yeah. But the tour bus left and was down in Florida the very next day or a day after or so. And Randy Rhoads and the pilot and a makeup artist were all killed. The pilot was hot dogging and buzzing the bus and actually crashed. They were all killed. So his last show historically took place here in Knoxville. And a couple of my friends, including Bruce, were there to see that.
Yeah, that's just unfortunate, but
It developed a unique nickname because of all this, correct?
It did.
Doctor Killer?
Yeah, or V-tail killer. Take your pick there. But yeah, essentially that V-tail, the reason they built it with a V-tail in the first place was for weight and drag. Instead of having 3 airfoils out there, they 2. That's less material, less weight, less drag. So, it's a good idea. So that's why they went with it. As a matter of fact, one of the test flights, when they were testing the Bonanza, it actually had a breakup of the tail and crashed, killing the test pilot. So
Wow.
That plane had a little bit of a bad history to even begin with, but they figured that out, got it structurally right, and started flying it. And like we had these accidents and so forth. Essentially, what I was reading is people would take the plane into bad weather or overspeed the aircraft, and it would cause that tail structure to fail, which would cause a crash. So it was just using the airplane improperly, causing a structural failure. So eventually in 1982, they just quit building them because there was just, a liability issue that they just bad news, bad stories in, insurance. So let's go with the conventional tail. And with the engines getting bigger and stronger, the weight savings and the drag weren't as big an issue. So they just moved away from it.
And that was the end of the Model 35 to be replaced by the 33 and then the 36, right?
Right. The 36 is just a stretched version of the 33. And something I was reading, the 33 was intended to be the cheaper option with less features. But what was happening was customers were putting all the regular features back into the airplane when they ordered it. So it wasn't really cheaper. So they just quit making the Debonair, called it a Bonanza, and then, well, let's just make it the 36 and put everything back in it, stretch it out, get that 5-passenger capability, and here we go. And success.
Well, one thing I was trying to find was any information about this plane being used much in pilot training. I mean, this is something, obviously, if you're going to be flying one of these, you're going to be taught how to fly. But, we mentioned before in talking about the Cessna 172 that plane has quite a presence in flight schools. And I couldn't find much about Bonanzas being used that way. Is that a common use?
To be honest, I did not see much about it being used in flight schools either. Obviously, it has to be in some places, but no, I don't think I think it's more of a second airplane for people. It's, you learn to fly like in a Cessna or something similar, and then you move up to this plane because it is faster, it's hotter. It's a more demanding aircraft. So I don't think you can learn in it, obviously, but I don't think it's primarily its first use.
It's very much like a Sirius 172 or a Sirius Vision jet. You get your pilot's license in a Cessna, and then you learn how to fly the Bonanza or
Right.
So very similar to Sirius's situation. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's how I took it.
It's a little bit. It's a lot of plane to learn on. Trust me, I know.
Well, what are some of the stats for this plane? Size and speed and wingspan, that kind of stuff. What are we looking at here?
Like we were saying, you've got a pilot. It can carry 5 passengers. Its length is 27 feet 6 inches, wingspan of 33 feet 6 inches. It stands about 8.5 feet tall. So it's, a reasonably good size aircraft. Empty weight is 25,000 pounds or 2,500 pounds, 3,600 pounds gross weight. It runs on a Continental IO 550B 300 horsepower engine. Like we were saying, it's 3-bladed Hartzell propellers. It cruises at about 200 miles an hour. I think the stall speed was about 61 or 68 miles an hour. So, it's a little quick, but not terrible. Range of 824 nautical miles, ferry range of 1,000 miles. And you can get it up to about 18,500 feet. And one of the things I did read is it's an exceptionally good climber. It climbs 1,230 feet a minute, which is apparently a pretty quick climb. You can get up high really quick in this bird.
That's awesome. And as I mentioned, you could perform, well, maybe you couldn't, and certainly I couldn't perform aerobatics, but it can be done under the right conditions by the right pilot.
Oh, yeah.
So, despite the issues we mentioned with the VTail, there are still a lot of VTails that are out there flying, and so you're as likely to see a VTail, it seems to me, in my non-scientific record keeping here. You're as likely to see a VTail as a conventional tail, right?
Yes, absolutely. There are a lot. Well, 17,000, and they built them from 47 to 82. So, yeah, there's a lot of VTails out there. As a matter of fact, when you get to Oshkosh, just go out and watch that beach Bonanza flight when they have them all fly in together, and you'll see
The
probably
mass
everything.
arrival. Yeah, the mass
Yes,
arrival
that's
is
it.
fantastic. And now that I know a little bit more about what I'll be looking for, being able to tell the models apart from each other, I really, really am hoping to see one with the fabric control surfaces. I will happily report back to the podcast if I am successful in finding one, because that would
Definitely
be
do.
rare indeed.
Oh, yeah, because like I said, I think there was only about 40 made. So there's not many out there if they're still out there, because those were 47 models.
I did see that they're still selling about 70 a year. Is that correct?
Yeah, that sounds correct.
Although they did have a year where they didn't sell very many not too long ago. But Beech no longer manufactures this, right? Beech is not the manufacturer. It's Raytheon.
Yes, and another one of those cases of the big fish buys up the little fish. So yes, it's still considered a beach bonanza, but Raytheon is the actual company that builds them today.
Fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Yes, let's jump into final thoughts, guys. Starting with you, Dave Gorman.
Well, this was a real treat, and I appreciate the opportunity, as always, to learn on my own and with you guys about an aircraft that is very, very common in the skies and on the runways around this part of the world. I've never flown in one. I've never really talked to a pilot of one before, but certainly have seen a lot of them, and now I know a lot more about what I'll be looking for. Fantastic aircraft. What a lineage to think that it's been in production for close to 80 years.
Long time.
Is outrageous. And if I'm ever in one, I'll be prepared for the pilot to hand me the yoke. Try not to panic too much.
David Rowe.
Yeah, this is a modern day classic that was designed, in the 40s. The great design that has stood the test of time. Sleek and fast, a roomy airplane. It's a quality aircraft, and it's great to see it. I heard one pilot say it's built like a tank. It flies like a sports car. It's just a joy to fly. Great airplane. Didn't know as much as I did, but I do now, and can sort of tell them apart now when I see them in the air. So a good thing to look forward to when I get to the airport. So great plane and a great discussion. Enjoyed it.
Definitely. And I want to give a big shout out to one of our super listeners, Allison, which she is the one that requested we do this plane. And this is our first request, correct?
I believe it is.
This is our very first request. I know Allison very well. I work with her every day, and she's great. And her father actually owns a Bonanza. I'm not sure which model or anything like that. But let's jump in to social media, the good old social media, starting with you, David Rowe.
Aerophile.com, AEROWEPHILE.com. I've got all the social covered. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. I've got a website under that. Come check me out. Pictures, videos. I've got some HH60 Blackhawk video that'll be showing up on Friday, so look for that.
Dave Gorman.
I have to mention, Dave, you also had an experience with family of a pilot you recently videoed who reached out to you and was thrilled to have some video, and I think they're sending you a squadron patch, right?
That is correct. We had some visiting T-38 Talons in town, 4 of them, and just went out, took video, pictures, posted it, and was contacted online by the mother of one of the pilots and says, yeah, that's my son.
Nice.
We really appreciate you taking a video, and the video has taken off. I've got almost 1,000 views on it in just the first week, which is
Nice.
really great.
Well,
and it's all thanks to her.
We see what you did there. The video's taken off.
Yeah, that's what we want.
Taking off as fast as a bonanza.
That's it, buddy.
That's right.
All right. Well, you can find me on Instagram at _It's Dave Gorman, where I occasionally have aviation-related pictures that I post. Same with my YouTube channel, Gormania videos. A whole lot of music lately. I've been busy doing that and having a great time. But looking forward to heading to Oshkosh here in a few weeks, where I will definitely add to my aviation videos. So you want to look out for those there.
Definitely, we're going to do I think we're going to do a special, another bonus episode with you from Oshkosh.
I will, we will work out those details. Certainly, I would love to hear from listeners who want, if there's an aircraft that's going to be up there. I know Kermit Weeks is sending his A-26 up there for the first time. There's going to be the Baton, which is David, help me out. My mind is going blank. The big the Lockheed.
The Constellation.
Thank you, the Constellation. Shame on me.
The Connie
is hopefully going to be making its first appearance there. So, if there are any aircraft you want a little short feature on, maybe I could shoot some video in front of and walk you through it for the podcast.
Super Guppy.
That would be cool.
That would be cool.
Well, guys, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was great. Really enjoyed it. Before we go, I'm going to quiz you real quick.
Uh-oh.
Can you name some other VTOL aircraft that are out there flying?
You mean other than the Cirrus?
Vision 1 jet. That's where I was going.
Okay. Yeah, that's one. I've got a few more.
That's
Can you
all I
think
got.
of any others? All right.
He's got one in his background, and I ain't got a clue what it is.
Well,
looks like a Convair or something or other.
You're close. I'll get to that one last. All right, here's a list. Sonics and YX home builds, if you recognize those.
Absolutely. See Sonics up at Oshkosh. They're built right there.
Yes, they are. The Bell V-280 Valor, the aircraft that's replacing the Black Hawk, is a VTOL. That's a new one. The Fauga Magister, which is an Italian aircraft, I believe.
Fuga Magister, yeah. I saw one of those on a flatbed passing through Knoxville about a month ago.
Oh, wow.
Did you really? Okay,
yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
So VTOL. Obviously, the Global Hawk and the Reaper drones are both VTOLs. And probably the biggest one is the F-117 Nighthawk. That's a VTOL.
Oh, my gosh. Well, yeah.
He got us again.
I wasn't sure we were allowed to talk about that one. It's still classified, so.
Well, it is. All right, so going back to the picture in my background, this one is a plane that I know of, but I'd never seen it in this configuration. It is a Republic XF-91 Thunderceptor with a VTOL.
Crazy.
It was an it's actually the wings on it are thinner at the root than they are at the outside edge. They're giant on the outside and thin at the inside. But it had a VTOL version, which I had never seen before. So there you go. There's some VTOLs that you might not have known were out there.
Absolutely not. Well, things were kind of wide open back in the 40s and 50s when it came to design. They had all kinds of ideas. They were trying to incorporate things, see what worked, and modifications. So pretty classic stuff.
Absolutely. Cool designers. Way to go.
Definitely, guys. And to our listeners, we'd like to thank you, and we hope you enjoyed it. And please leave us something in the comment section below and study up for next week for David Rowe's quiz. For David Rowe, Dave Gorman, I'm Derrick Beeler. Thanks for listening to the History of Aviation podcast.
This is Joe Morse. You are listening to the History of Aviation podcast with Derrick Beeler, David Rowe, and David Gorman.